We must expect it in the calling. We're going to attract lightning. We're going to be exposed to storm. We're going to be exposed to test. As any good shepherd in the protection of his sheep, we will fight bears and lions that they will never know anything about to protect them. And we'll bear hidden scars of a shepherd that just goes with the occupation. And Jesus warned us in the ministry that we had to be careful for the proclivities of things that go with the ministry, because he said to his disciples, "Woe unto you when offense comes, of all the perils and plagues of Revelation, of the vials and the trumpets and the seals, none of them are so damning, none of them are so devastating as the woes." And so he used in that frame of reference that when offense comes, it is as if a woe has come. And it's the time to be especially vigilant and concerned. But the soul will vividly reveal those battles that you have had in your past ministry. But what it'll also show is how you handled it and how long it took you to heal from the afflicted wound that came. They say in a tree that where there has been damage and stress in the storm, that when the fibers of the wood heal, that a strength appears that was not there before. So it is in the soul. But where the weakness remains, it carries it through ring after ring after ring. It carries it deep into the heart of the tree, maybe even like the redwood for 120 years. Could I ask you tonight, what's your story? Everybody has one. Everyone can tell a tale of inflicted wounds of injustice somewhere in the past. But the difference between all of us is not what happened, but how we heal and were affected by what did happen. There is no wound that you can have inflicted that can ever bring failure to your ministry. There is not a wound that can ever happen to you at the hands of anyone that can steal your voice, that can silence or neutralize your ministry. The only thing that can do that is your attitude and your response to the wounds that come to your life. Offense can become significant instruments of God if you just won't become cynical and bitter. It seems to me, I just seem to feel that God's wisdom is best taught and mediated in the processes of tragedy. I know that my greatest growth in my life came at a time when I wandered in the rubble of a broken dream that was shattered by uncaring tongues and hands. But in that time of process of fighting with bitterness and begging God to either take it, relieve it, or kill me, that the greatest spiritual progress and growth in my life occurred. I know this, at the depth of character that I lacked in some areas, God mediated to me through the process of the developing warfare of seeking to make a correct response in the face of injustice. I know that probably the greatest strengths that I bring to the pulpit of the church I pastor have grown out of the wounds of the past. There are people sitting here tonight. There are preachers and preachers' wives who have suffered or are suffering through circumstances of injustice that you cannot change. Can I tell you tonight that the Lord spoke to me in the hotel, Brother Mangan confirmed it in his office, that if somebody will hear this message tonight, and if the bitterness can pour out of your heart, there is a family member, a wife, yourself or child, that God will raise up from a crippling infirmity and set you free. The tormentors of bitterness have you bound and fettered. You may not be able to change your circumstance, but you certainly have the power to control and change your response. Our injustices don't always happen to us when we're wrong. Oftentimes times they come to us when we're doing that which was right. It was in the process of gathering the sticks and encouraging the fire to warm and to dry out the cold and chilled. Members of the shipwreck, when a viper come up out of the fire and latched itself onto the hand of Paul. And the Bible said that he just shook it off in the fire and that he walked on. The best response that you can make to bitterness, the best response you can make to injustice is to shake it off in the fire of revival and just go on living for God. But if you can't shake it off, there's some place that you can go. For he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was put upon him. And with his stripes, we are healed. Calvary is still the answer. Oh, hallelujah. David was residing in Hebron. Among his wives was the daughter of the king of Geshur. She bore unto him 2 children by the name of Absalom and Tamar. At the time of the story, Absalom was 21 and Tamar was 18. They were beautiful, stately, elegant children. Another of David's wives was Ahinoam, who was a Jezreelitess, and she bore him 1 son by the name of Amnon. With cunning counsel of a friend, the Bible said that they by subterfuge plotted the rape of Tamar. The day that she was violated, Tamar's life was devastated. She was never given in marriage. She never was allowed to be a keeper of the home. She never cradled children in the caring arms as a mother and nurtured them. When Absalom heard her story, the unparalleled faith, unquestioned faith in his father, knew that he would require of Amnon a full recompense for his heinous act. But months passed, and nothing was done. He watched as the ravages of humiliation ate the soul and the spirit and the heart, the beauty right out of the countenance of his sister. In a seething crucible in his heart, he brewed a bitterness that plotted a fateful day of retribution. When the day came, he tasted the sweet blood of vengeance for him and his sister. He fled to Geshur to hide in the shadow of his grandfather's throne. But the wound didn't heal. Somehow the blood of Amnon, the vengeance, did not satiate the appetite of bitterness. It festered, and it festered, and it festered. Joab sought to bring about a reconciliation, and so he employed the wise woman of Tekoa, and her carefully crafted story turned the heart of David. And the king beckoned, and Absalom was returned to Jerusalem. But he was not reconciled to his father. In fact, the Bible said, and it's a message all its own, it says that Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem and saw not the king's face. Sister Mangan, is exactly what you were preaching about today. Men that live in the ministry who preach, but never one time in the week ever go someplace and find God and look into the king's face. You come and go from the church. You come and go from the ministry. You come and go from the office. But it's been so long since you've seen the king's face. 7 years separated Absalom from the injustice. Now, after his 2 years of unreconciled differences with his father back in Jerusalem, 7 years. Let me bring this sad saga to a quick conclusion. The aftermath of this story, Brother Anthony Mangan, is that 40,000 innocent men died in the wake of Absalom's bitterness. Caught up in his battle, 40,000 young men were swept into Absalom's bitterness and died on the battlefield with him. Brother Kilgore, how many young men today are being damaged by bitterness and wounds that have long long since passed, that should have long since been to Calvary? How many of our kids are further going to be lost? How many more churches are going to be devastated? How many more districts are going to be prisoners of stagnation and sterility? Because we constantly are bending down to the corpses of dead issues and dead wounds and constantly trying to breathe and resuscitate new life into them. We can talk about revival all we want to. We can preach about power and faith and prayer all we want to. But until our hearts are knit together as one, until our souls are knit together by one Spirit, we are just talking. We'll never see the majesty of promised revival. Clap your hands to the Lord.